Okay, so we are now recording, and I'd like to introduce Raymond Miller with the Central Texas region. So, Raymond.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Take it away.
Well, thank you for joining our Red Cross University presentation today. And this is a new concept that a lot of you are interested in finding out what's it all about, and it's something that we're going to talk today. But before I begin, Jose Dominguez wants to give a brief overview of how the Red Cross University idea came about. So, Jose, if you're on the call, if you want to quickly give a little intro, then I'll begin.
Yeah, thank you, Raymond. Hi, guys. This is Jose. I'm the Regional Director of Volunteer Services for our Central and South Texas region. I'm really excited and very proud of the wonderful volunteer services team in this region collaborating together to roll out this wonderful concept that we all put together and came up with, and it's just a whimsical and creative way to engage our volunteers a little bit more and get them excited about the training opportunities that we have, especially throughout all this change. So I'm gonna, just want to thank, Neil and his team for letting us do this. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our volunteer services team in Central South Texas region and ask any questions. Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Raymond, team.
Thanks, Jose. So essentially, our Red Cross University, how it all began, was we identified a problem with our training structure. And all of you are not strangers to the fact that there's so many online classes, in-person classes that are changing. There's just so much flux within our training curriculum that we always want to figure out, what's the easiest and the most interesting way to get volunteers to buy into training and to be aware of all the new classes and what classes they need to qualify for certain gaps and so on. And so we started brainstorming ideas of how can we make some kind of creative concept that volunteers can wrap their head around and really want to take training, not just a few classes to get trained in a particular degree and then just stop training altogether, but how can we promote cross-training and other lines of service and things like that. So, we have this Red Cross University, which is not a foreign concept. There's some other regions that have coined the Red Cross University phrase before, and they have their own systems. But what we found in researching that is we didn't really find that there was a really creative model out there. And so what we wanted to model our Red Cross University after was an actual university concept. And for those of you who have been in college before, you know that there's curriculum plans when you're getting a degree. We thought how fun would it be to develop different degrees for different lines of service and different activities and have volunteers complete those degrees, almost like they're enrolling in college. They're completing a degree plan, and then once they're complete, they actually get a diploma that says, I'm now certified in this line of service. So to give you just a brief overview of the purpose of Red Cross University, the main goal was to make a new and fun way to interact and engage both new volunteers and seasoned volunteers. So we're not just focusing on those new volunteers that come in the door wanting to have some kind of training path, but what about those seasoned volunteers that have been around for years and years? How can we get them engaged and want to take classes? We always have these new classes that come available. How can we entice the more seasoned volunteer to take that new training when they may not necessarily need it? And so we came up with this Red Cross University concept. We also wanted to provide an integrated training program for all of our volunteers. What we found at our new volunteer orientations was we had a lot of confusion with volunteers as to what classes should I take. I want to be a DAT member, but what classes should I take? Or I want to be a shelter worker, a disaster assessment. What is there a training path for me? And sure, we have training classes for them to qualify, but we've never had a full-on kind of curriculum set together that they can look at all the different things on the checklist, check them off, and then get them engaged. And besides just classes, what about meetings and drills and activities and things that they can get involved in? We want to have a robust system that is not just take shelter fundamentals and then you're a shelter worker. We want to have things built in for electives and projects, and later on we'll show you what some of the degree plans actually look like and how these have these creative concepts put into them. And then lastly, we wanted a clear structure that would encourage volunteer retention, and we wanted a well-rounded volunteer that has opportunities for cross-training. So again, we wanted volunteers to get more than just their base training, but we want them to get advanced training, cross-training, And our hopes is that when we launch this program, that our retention rate will greatly increase, because once the volunteer finishes the degree, they're going to want to continue to participate and complete more degrees and get more involved in the university concept. So we're really excited about that. So our training structure, which a lot of you are wondering, well, how are we going to set this up? We've been doing a lot of work over the past months to set up a really robust and organized structure. And so just like a normal university, we have three main degrees. We have an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's degree. Now, an associate's is something that, if you remember from college classes, you always have those core classes that you may not want to take, but it's just a requirement for every major. And so what we've done is we have a Red Cross Associate's degree planned, which every single volunteer, regardless if they're SAS or if they're volunteering at the front desk or if they're a disaster volunteer, they all have to take the same associates. And on that associates, they have the new volunteer orientation, they have disaster services overview, they have a few new classes that we've created, an SAF basics class, a development 101 workshop. They're just quick little overviews of different lines of service. So that way, we always have volunteers that, they might become a disaster volunteer, but they have no idea what SAF does, or they have no idea what development does. So we're hoping by this associate, it will kind of force people to have a little understanding of all the lines of service, because you never know when you're a disaster volunteer and you get some fundraising questions on the job. And so we're hoping that this cross-training will really have a new hybrid of volunteer. And then a bachelor's is more specialized training. And once you take that basic associates and you get the overview of all the departments, then you go into specialized training in our bachelor's, which we'll show you an example here in a little bit. And then master's is something that we're going to be launching second. So right now we're just focused on the associates and the bachelor's because that's quite a lot of content as well. And the master's would be something for more advanced level training. So you think about, if you're considering gaps here, you think about supervisor level and above. You want to be a supervisor, or we might even get creative enough to do a PhD if you want to be a manager or something like that. We haven't gotten that advanced yet, but again, it's really fun concept to get people to want to get trained. There's so many training classes that sometimes it can be a little intimidating for a new volunteer. So if we make it fun and innovative, we're hoping that volunteers will buy in right away and say, hey, I want to complete an associate's and then get a bachelor's, and heck, then I want another bachelor's. And so we're excited about that. And then lastly here, the process. So the process is something that is very important to Red Cross University, because you want to know who the key players are. So who's actually going to implement Red Cross University and keep it going and things like that. And the way we set up Red Cross University is we don't want it to be dependent on staff members to run Red Cross University, because of course we're a volunteer organization, and volunteers are always going to be there, and you have to have a flex in staff. A staff member comes, staff member goes, and then you start losing that concept of who does what. So we set it up so that anybody can plug into Red Cross University into this process and get involved. So we'll show you a little later on how a volunteer can sign up themselves through Volunteer Connection on Red Cross University. But just a basic overview of what happens when a volunteer walks in the door for the process is at our new volunteer orientation, that's the opportunity for your volunteer services team to discuss all the opportunities that a volunteer has available to them. And hopefully after that NEVO, you've identified each volunteer and what area that they want to do. So what we're going to be doing in our NEVOs is, and we're not forcing everybody to participate in Red Cross University. Again, that's going to be something optional, but it's going to be one of those highly encouraged optional plans. So at our NEVOs, we're going to be handing out the basic associate's degree. We'll exactly what it is, why it's important, what Red Cross University is, and then give those associates on a hard copy paper to all those individuals. Now, of course, we'll all have this time, so people can do it online as well, but it's important to just give them that hard copy so they can take home immediately. And so once they complete that associates, because what we find is that we have a lot of volunteers that sign up, they go through NEVO, and then they never follow through. So we might have 20 volunteers in a NEVO, and only 2 of them are actually getting advanced training. So we're hoping that this associates can almost in a way filter out those that are dedicated and those that are just signing up and then kind of flaming out. And so our associates are presented at the NEVO, And then once they complete that associates, they would come back to the advisor, is the coinage that we have. So your volunteer services staff would be an advisor, almost like a guidance counselor. That they talk to the volunteer, they help them through their initial classes, and then once the volunteer has completed those classes, and again, we're putting the onus back on the volunteer that they have to come to us with their completed degree plan. We're not going to badger anybody or keep track of who's done what. The expectation is that the volunteer keeps track of their own progress, then they come back to volunteer services and say, here, I've completed my associates, I'm ready to discuss my next line of service or what bachelor's degree plan I have. So at that point is when naturally in Volunteer Connection you have the referral process, when you refer to an individual line of service. So for this example, we'll use a DAT member. So a volunteer completes their associates, they talk to their advisor, and it's been identified that they really want to do DAT. So what happens is you send a referral to what we're calling as the dean, so that the dean of whatever that college is. So it could be the dean of disaster college, and the specialized dean at DAT would get that referral, and then they would talk to that individual and discuss what a DAT member is, and then if that volunteer still wants to do DAT, so they could hear about DAT and then decide, well, I actually want to do disaster assessment instead. And so whatever they decide, we give them that, the dean would give them that bachelor's degree that has a specialized training on it. And then again, the volunteer would be responsible for completing all the classes, everything on the degree plan, and then they'd come back to the dean and say, here, I've completed all of my curriculum. And then the advisor and the dean together would then be able to get them moved on to the next process. So again, I want to stress that the onus is on the volunteer, because it can be pretty complicated when trying to track who's had what classes and who's completed what. And so we have a system that we'll show you later on in Volunteer Connection that can help the volunteer to track their own progress, and then essentially just come back to one of the deans or the advisors to show the curriculum that they've had. And then lastly, once a volunteer does complete that bachelor's degree, the fun part is graduation. So who doesn't love to be celebrated for all your hard work? And so once you complete that bachelor's degree, we're going to have a graduation. And what we do is, typically if you have a volunteer meeting, you might have one once a week, once a month. If you're in the Central Texas region, we do it once a month. And so what we're going to be doing in our monthly volunteer meetings is presenting out diplomas for those that complete their bachelor's and their line of service. And so we're going to have actual diplomas that we've created. We have a little seal. So you'll see on the PowerPoint there's that gold seal. That's not exactly what it looks like. So it's going to say Red Cross University, Central and South Texas region, and then we're going to have a little gold stamp that we put on a certificate that we put in a little piece of paper, and then we hand out to the volunteer at those volunteer meetings. So it's just a fun way of recognizing people, and our hope is that once all these new volunteers start getting these degree plans, that some of those senior volunteers start thinking, well, hey, I want to get a degree plan as well. And the thing that I do want to stress is that, this is not just for new volunteers, but it's for those volunteers that have been around forever. And we're kind of sneaky in that we set up some new classes that we customly created just for Red Cross University. So nobody automatically qualifies to get a degree. They still have to do, one or two classes or some of our new concepts. So that's what we're excited about, is getting everybody involved. And so our next step is I'm going to have Kelly Rosatella, one of our other staff members, show you the actual degree plans. But I do want to stress that while she's doing that, to please look at it and kind of start testing yourself to see what classes have you taken or what electives have you taken, and start thinking that on your personal level, and just kind of consider how that would look to your volunteers and to yourself. And we're really excited about this program and the capability and the potential that it has. So I'll pass it off now to Kelly Rosatella, who actually shows you what I've been talking about, the individual degree plans. So, Kelly, would you like to take it from here?
Sure, thanks, Raymond. Hey, everybody, this is Kelly, as Raymond introduced. I'm here to actually go through what the actual degree plans look like. So on the next slide, you will see what our Red Cross University Associates will be. So our Red Cross University Associates is going to be the basic course load that every new volunteer and returning volunteer will go through. And so the basic goal for this associate is to give a general overview of all of the lines of service that the Red Cross offers. So as you can see here, of course, they will go through your NEVO, new employee and volunteer orientation. We have disaster services and overview on there, public affairs essentials, and as Raymond had mentioned, we have created some new classes just for Red Cross University, and some of those new classes include Introduction to Development that our wonderful development team has been working on for us. So basically, like I said, the general goal for this is to provide a well-rounded education for our volunteers so that even if they decide to go into disaster, if someone comes up and asks them about service to the armed forces, they'll have the basic knowledge to be able to provide to the person that is asking that question. So they'll go through our core requirements, which are the introduction classes. And then we've also included different sections in here that are going to try and help the volunteers become more engaged with us. So not only are they going to go through the intro classes, they're also going to attend a monthly volunteer meeting, meet with their team to help them pick a major. And then moving on, if you look at the electives, you'll see different classes and events that they can attend as well that is going to focus on keeping them engaged. Going to an outreach event, inviting a friend to become a volunteer, volunteering in the office for 2 hours. They can also complete either serving people with functional needs or diversity and sensitivity e-learning. So these are the basic classes that they'll go through. It'll give them a good working knowledge, and it's also going to help them decide what niche that they want to go into, what line of service that they're most interested in. After they complete our associate's degree, like Raymond said, we'll be presenting the diplomas to them at the end of the monthly meeting after they've completed the degree, and then they will go on to pick their major, at which point they'll be presented with their bachelor's. So on the following slides, we've got some examples of some of our bachelor's that we have created. The first bachelor's I want to show you is one of our disaster services bachelor's, which is a major in recovery. So I know it's a little small on the screen. I did want to take some notes on some of the information that we do have on the bachelor's before I dig into the nitty-gritty. So if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, under core requirement, you'll see kind of codes that we've given to each of the classes, and we've given codes to the associates as well. Just so you know, those codes basically do not go to any specific SABA class. If you look at GF201, that does not correlate to a SABA class. Those codes we've created to help us organize the associates, the bachelor's, and the master's degree. This also includes on the right-hand side under the unit the different numbers that we've given to each of the classes. Just like in college, different classes have a different number of units that you can earn, and we've tried to correlate it as closely as possible to the length of the class or the importance of the class. Of course, you know, some of the classes aren't exactly an hour, but we're trying to get them as close as possible. So just in case anybody had any questions about that, those are basically used by us to help us organize the different degrees. So looking more closely at the disaster services major and recovery bachelor's, you'll see the core requirements are really focusing on giving a good overview for a disaster volunteer. We want them to complete a family disaster plan. We want them to be prepared first. We want them to go through mass care and overview, recovery and overview. We also want them to stay engaged by attending 3 disaster meetings. We want them to go through a disaster exercise. And then we also want them to keeping engaged with their advisor, with their dean, to determine what their blue sky role will be, as well as complete an evaluation with disaster and complete a volunteer satisfaction survey. These CAP surveys are going to be so strong going forward in the future. This is kind of, we put this into our bachelor's to create a natural flow for when our volunteers will complete a volunteer satisfaction survey with us. So those are the core requirements. A lot of those core requirements are the same across the board for our disaster degree. If you start digging into the major requirements, you'll see what those will be for them to qualify as a recovery volunteer, going through the CAS 2.0 classes, attending casework and recovery planning fundamentals. We want them to complete 7 hours of local casework as well. And then if you look a little bit more closely at the electives, we want to give them a choice of different options that they can choose. They can just follow it. They can learning a little bit more about a different line of service within disaster if they want to. They can choose to take psychological first aid. They can complete 5 more hours of local casework. And then on the next page, you can see a little bit more about the different elements they can take. We also do want to give them the option of completing a second major, or a double major, so they can complete a DAT degree as well for their electives. So all of this is trying to just incorporate the different things that they can do to stay engaged with us, learn more about our lines of service, and really become a well-rounded, knowledgeable Red Cross volunteer. So that is the first bachelor's that we're going to look at. The next bachelor's that I do want to take a look at is something going a little bit away from disaster, which is our Public Information Officer bachelor's. So this has been created by our wonderful public affairs coworker, Bristol. And as you can see with the core requirements here, she wants all of her public information officers volunteers to, of course, attend the public affairs workshop. We want them to shadow active PIOs on 3 different responses to really get good experience. We want them to be engaged and stay engaged by attending monthly meetings. They can learn a little bit more about engaging clients and volunteers online with our digital engagement volunteer workshop. And we also want them to become comfortable speaking in public, so attending public outreach events, doing a speaking engagement with other agencies or community groups, and of course doing disaster public affairs online as well. All make up the core requirements for our Public Information Officer bachelor's. And then if you look at the electives, like I said, we want to encourage them to learn a little bit more about different lines of service. They can take shelter fundamentals, learn about psychological first aid. We want to encourage them to come into the chapter, help us answer phones, and do some admin work or do a project for us for a few hours. All of these things will encourage the volunteer to learn more and engage with us as well. So that is a brief overview of the Public Information Officer bachelor's. I think the next bachelor's we've got going forward, if you want to change the slide for me, is another disaster services bachelor's. It's our disaster mental health bachelor's. Like I said, our core requirements across the board for disaster tend to be the same because we do want to create a well-rounded disaster volunteer that all have the same base working knowledge as their sister volunteer as well. So if you look, we are going to have them complete a family disaster plan, do the mass care and overview. We want them to come to the meeting. All of those are involved in the core requirements. And then the major requirements kind of dig into the nitty-gritty of what that line of service does and the classes they need to take to become a disaster mental health volunteer. So psych first aid, disaster mental health fundamentals. We want them to learn about CAS and to obtain CAS access as well. And then the electives, as I said before, we give them the option of completing a DAT degree, to do a double major. They can become a disaster instructor if they want. They can invite a friend to join the Red Cross, which we would love them to do over and over again, and then deploying on a DRO as a disaster mental health volunteer as well. So they can pick and choose which electives they want to do, what's most convenient for them, and what they are interested in doing. The next bachelor's, and I believe the last bachelor's we'll be talking about today, is our disaster services major in mass care. As I said over and over again, the core requirements are the same, just to give those volunteers that baseline knowledge of disaster services. And then the major requirements are digging into what they're going to need to know and the skills they're going to need to have for that line of service. So for this example, it would be the major in mass care. So they'll be doing shelter fundamentals, feeding fundamentals, basic food safety, CAS classes. We want them to complete a shelter survey, 2 shelter surveys to really get some good working knowledge on how that's done. And of course, psychological first aid to learn how to take care of yourself and others on a disaster response. And then digging into the electives are just really encouraging those volunteers to stay engaged with us, come to meetings, participate in an outreach event, and learn more about different lines of service within disaster as well. So that is the very brief overview of some of the different bachelors and associates that we have created for Red Cross University. And like we said, we have a service armed forces bachelor's, we have a development bachelor's, to really give those volunteers the path that they need to become a confident volunteer to do Red Cross work. So now that I've gone through kind of the nitty-gritty of what everything looks like, Josh, I'm going to pass it over to Josh McDonald, who has been working really long and hard on the Red Cross University portal and Volunteer Connection, which is a way that our volunteers can track their progress in Volunteer Connection.
All right. The whole essence of Volunteer Connection is supposed to try to make the lives of our volunteers easier to kind of keep up to date with things and kind of empower themselves. So that's really the direction we're taking with the integration with Volunteer Connection with the Red Cross University portal. Things that are involved in it include a tab where they can request a class. So they're looking at their degrees, they're looking at the calendar, they don't see it on the calendar, they have the ability, they can request that class, we'll then get notified, hey, this person needs to take this class. We can then set it up, contact them. Again, puts a little bit more back into their hands. And also helps us avoid volunteers falling through the cracks, because there are volunteers that are they're very active, they're very involved with it, but they may just look at the class schedule and say, oh, no class this month, so I'll check that next month. This goes back to them and says, oh, I need to finish the shelter fundamentals class, an exercise class. I need to request that, and that's all built into this portal. It's built in underneath my chapter, and once they're in NEVO or if they're a current volunteer, there's a link that they enroll at. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour with our tests for this portal to kind of automatically open up. We're doing this all through the forms. So they submit a form, it then routes to an access group, and then opens up this part of the Volunteer Connection for them. Right? All right, so in the Red Cross University portal, so when they sign up with Red Cross University, the only two things they're going to see, what that comes up, is online courses and then the associate's degree. That'll be all that pops up. The online courses, those are the ones that that's that SAF Basics class and Development 101, which we've built into pages within Volunteer Connection. And then, much like how the online NEVO is, they click a button that says that they're done with it, and then it tracks and all that kind of stuff. With the associate's degree, the essence of the portal is this is how they're able to track. We've talked with volunteers, there was concern that, well, we're going to get a piece of paper. We have to hold on to that piece of paper. What happens when we lose the paper? This kind of gets away from that. Ray, can you check the progress? Okay. This is how the volunteers are able to track their own progress on the degree. None of the stuff on here is required, but what that does is they can keep on coming back to this page and updating stuff and then submit, and it'll save as they're going. So if they complete a DSO, they hop on, put the date down, hit submit, then the next time they come in, that date's already there, and it shows them where they're going. If they lose their paper copy, there's a link within this where they can download a new version, a new copy of the associate's degree. And then once they move through with the elective, they can basically select the elective, do the thing, and it just moves through pretty flawlessly. Once they're done, they, at the bottom, you'll see request for completed degree. They click that button. Again, it's a form that says, by clicking this button, I submit that I've completed all the degree requirements. One of the requirements of the thing is that you're tracking your hours in Volunteer Connection. So we would then go back through, compare everything to Volunteer Connection to the training thing. It'll all link up nicely. At the next volunteer meeting, we then issue the diploma or degree at that point in time. So that's the associate. From the associate, there is then, right, okay, that, so say like they're going to go into a major in community partnerships. They then enroll. There's a function within Red Cross University where they can go through and they can select a degree that they'd like to enroll in. Again, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour. for it all to kind of roll over and for this part of the system to pop up. They then have access to information on the College of Disaster Services, and then they've got this community partnerships degree progress, much like the associate's degree. One of the caveats of this is if you have any sort of access within Volunteer Connection, you can see all the degrees at the same time. We're trying to iron that out, but to the everyday volunteer that does not have administrative access, it's going to be opening up, and then they're not going to be cluttered with over information. Anyway, with the community partnerships bachelor's degree, right? Much like the other one, it's a little bit small, but just because there's more stuff on that. They go in, they can record each of the pieces, and then they don't have to record it all at once. They can submit it, they can come back to it. This also increases the usage of Volunteer Connection, which I know is a national initiative. And then, again, at the bottom, once they're done with it, they're able to request the degree completion. We then go back through and check through, and then at the end of their, at the next volunteer meeting, we then issue the degree. I think that might be it. Ray, what's the next tab? Okay.
The next tab is we wanted to include some Red Cross University branding. Not only do we want to present these volunteers with a diploma, thanking them for, and showing them all of the work that they've put in to make themselves more knowledgeable volunteers, we wanted to also be able to provide them with some sort of T-shirt saying, hey, I'm an alumnus of the Red Cross University. I've completed these degrees. So this is just a little mock-up of some of the branding that we've been working on.
All right, well, at this time, if anybody has any questions about any facet of Red Cross University, we are happy to answer. And I also want to point out that if you have any follow-up questions or you want to get some more information about Red Cross University, feel free to email any of the volunteer services staff in the Central and South Texas region. And you can also email me at raymond.miller@redcross.org. I'd be happy to send you some information about Red Cross University and how you might be able to implement it in your own region. So, are there any questions at this time?
Hi, this is Susan from Oklahoma, Shawnee, Oklahoma. You answered one of my questions. I was wondering how we could get this implemented in our region. I think this is a fabulous idea. I'm so excited that you all have done this, and you deserve so many kudos. Two questions. When are you guys going to start this, and what if a volunteer has already taken some of the courses? Will that be noted in their transcript? Thank you.
Great, thanks. Good question. Yeah, certainly, we plan on launching this on January 1st is our deadline. We still have some volunteer connection work and some of them. We have a lot of recording processes as well in the system that, we can actually pull up reports that show who's completed what degree and things like that. So we're still trying to flesh all that out. But our goal is January 1st is when we launch it. And certainly once we launch it at that date, we'll have all sorts of information so we can send to the different regions and hopefully expand the system. I would love it to be a best practice that can be implemented throughout the country. And as for volunteers that have had existing training, that existing training will carry over to our new degree plan. So we're not going to force everybody to retake all the classes that they've had. So it could be that somebody automatically qualifies for almost everything on their degree plan. However, there's a few new things like some of the electives, invite a friend, attend a meeting, a workshop. Those are some of the things that we'll want them to kind of start anew. So attend those monthly meetings. As soon as they sign up for that degree plan, they'll have to start and attend 3 more meetings. So at the same time, we don't want anybody to automatically qualify because then what's the incentive for them to get involved in the program if they already get their degree automatically? But of course, any training or DROs or anything like that you've had experience with will carry on to the degree plan. Does that answer your question, Susan?
It sure does. Thank you. And again, I'm so glad you guys are doing this.
Oh, well, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Raymond, this is Keith. Bridget is in Dallas.
Hey, Keith.
Hey, as you know, we kicked off our Red Cross University last January 1st, and I had a couple of questions. Do you anticipate how long it will be between the time a volunteer completes an application and they receive their referral to the dean? Do you have a timeline?
You know, a lot of that is, I'm sorry. Let me see again.
Brandon, this is Josh. Let me answer this one. Basically, how the system works through, once they submit their application for the degree, the notification within Volunteer Connection is going to send an email to the dean. So it's, again, that 45 minutes to about an hour is when an email is going to get pushed out to the disaster services specialist who's responsible. They'll be notified pretty much that quickly. And then they're then able to track that person at that point in time. So about 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay, because I missed that. I thought you had indicated that they finished the associates with all of the basic courses before the referral went to the dean.
Yeah, it's so they do get the referral, but essentially they don't have that conversation with their dean about their next degree plan until they finish the associates.
Oh, okay. We require that conversation within 10 days. I just wanted to check on that. So I had it to my notes. Thank you.
Good, thanks. And of course, there's no one set, process. So of course, whatever current local policies you have in your own region will have to be applied to Red Cross University when you launch it in your region. So again, this is just kind of the concept and the ideas, and then it's up to your region to kind of customize it to best fit your volunteers.
Yeah. How many volunteers do y'all have?
Well, that's a good question. Now that we've gained some more territory, I'm not quite sure the total volunteers. I know we've had about 1,200 in Central Texas, and I'm not quite sure yet in the Southwest Texas region how many total volunteers they have. But it's quite a bit now.
Oh, okay. Because we started with about 7,000, and then we added San Angelo now. So I was just wondering.
Okay, I can get back to you on that, Keith.
Okay. I was just trying to get an idea of implementing the degrees and that sort of thing.
Okay, great. Is there any other questions? I know I've got some questions on the chat box as well, but I'll take some online or some questions on the phone first.
Hi, this is Dory from Oklahoma.
Hi.
Hi. I love your program. But I have a question. What FEMA courses? I noticed that there were some different ones that, on there, but the print was too small for me to see. What FEMA courses is it that you're having them take?
Hey, Greg, do you want to grab this one, Kelly?
Josh, do you mind if I take this one?
Yeah, Curtis, go ahead and answer that one just with your degree.
Hey, guys, this is Josh Jackson. I'm the Regional Disaster Officer, and we stayed away from FEMA classes for this. We kept it a little bit more Red Cross functional. We know that we've got lots of changes coming with workforce typing, and frankly, we've been working on a degree for government liaisons, and it's going to be a higher level degree because there's so much in it, so it's going to have more of the FEMA classes, so the 1, 2, 7, and 8, and then potentially also the 3 and 4 as we get higher up, but that's not set yet.
I thought I noticed that on your bachelor's one, that on the side there it had 2 FEMA courses. One was something like role of volunteers, but I really couldn't make it out. But I thought I noticed 2 different FEMA courses that weren't your typical, the one, the 1, 2, 7, 8, 3, 4.
So let me scroll back here. We have some ICS classes on there.
It was on the bachelor part.
The community preparedness one, the partnership.
Okay.
After you did the choices, there it is. So it says, take those 2 there. I cannot read what they are. It's like
it's 288 and looks like 292. You came across. So those are electives, so they're not requirements. It's just something that will around the volunteers. And of course, this is always a dynamic process. So if you find that there's a new class that develops, you can always add that in to some of these degree plans as well. So again, it's still not a finalized process, but we love the feedback. If you have any suggestions, we'd love to get your advice.
Thank you.
Yep. Are there any other questions out there on the phone?
Josh, you were talking about volunteer meetings. Where do you have those meetings across your region, or how many different locations?
Yeah, we have one at every chapter. So each chapter has a monthly meeting that we implement.
Oh, okay.
Yep. All right, well, I can start answering some of the questions here that I got in the chat box. So let me go through my questions here. We had a question from Carolyn Ross about how do you go about getting the Red Cross University tab added to Volunteer Connection? So Josh, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, it's basically right now the functionality to it is within the navigation tool and the form builder functions of Volunteer Connection. If you've got the access, it's within the unit configuration. You just build the forms, and we'll have a packaging of how to format the forms and all that kind of stuff, and just put them in there once we get it all packed done. But it's just throughout the navigation tool. It's just like you're adding a normal page to your Volunteer Connection website.
Great. Thanks, Josh. So next question is from LB Spencer about how long have we been doing this? And so you guys might want to correct me if I've been wrong, but I believe since last June, so almost over a year now, we've had this idea in the works, and we've been tossing around some ideas, but it hasn't been until the last probably about 5-6 months that we seriously started developing the content and getting all of our lines of service to put together some degree plans and curriculums and things like that. So it's probably been a little over a year now. And then as for what the next question is, what are the results of Red Cross University? Again, we haven't implemented this process yet. So right now we're just putting the content together, developing everything, putting the system in place, and then we should have some results once we launch January 1st and get volunteers to buy into it and see what the results are from there. But we'd be happy to start sharing our results once we launch this program on January 1st. All right, next question is from Elizabeth Dispo that says, will Red Cross University be tied to assigning gaps and making volunteers eligible for national deployment, which at this time does not require all these elements? And so the answer to this question is Red Cross University is, of course, not a national system, so we're not going to require somebody to get a degree plan in order to deploy. So that's something that Josh can probably answer more in depth about how the differences between GAPS deploying and Red Cross University. So if you're still here, Josh Jackson, do you want to answer this one? Okay, well, again, essentially the GAPS and Red Cross University, we do tie them together, but when a volunteer has all the necessary classes and training to deploy, we want to get them to deploy first. We don't want Red Cross University to be a hang-up or a roadblock in any way to getting volunteers active on a disaster. If that answers your question, what's the... All right, so next question is from Paul that says, is there any talk about continuing education units? And so that's a great thing that we haven't considered a lot about. I know that's something that I know Josh at McDonald's been worked a little bit on trying to get some research about that. So Josh, do you have any information that you found in your research about continuing education units?
I'm still, the whole concept of it is we're still trying to work through. But yeah, it's something we want to eventually kind of start implementing, because once they have the degree, the plan is not for them to drop off. And then some part of that, the CEU system, is not fleshed out. It's kind of like the master's and the PhD stuff. We haven't gotten there yet. We wanted to get the bones of this going.
Yep. Great, Josh. All right, the next question says, other regions have developed the Red Cross University with the same program in other regions. And so again, this is innovative to our region. We've had other Red Cross universities have been implemented in other regions, kind of more for, kind of coinage. The training program has been called Red Cross University. So there's been some iterations, but there's not been an iteration that we've seen that has a degree plan and has volunteers go through that same type of process. But there are some other Red Cross universities that are out there. As for their results and how it's participated for them, I'm not quite sure exactly what all the results are, but from what we've seen, it's just kind of another way of renaming their training program. And I believe there's 3 other regions that we've seen that have used that phrase. So Keith, if you want to talk a little bit about what you've done there in North Texas.
Yes, thanks. This is Keith Bridges. Last January, we implemented Red Cross University, and the concept was to move all of our training, disaster training, SAF, IS, volunteer training, all under one umbrella that moved into volunteer services. And we have supported the Red Cross University idea with a curriculum guide, course catalog. It's about a 70-page online document with all of the online courses linked, course description, things like that. Now, our curriculum guide is following national's requirements for gaps. We have not implemented anything along the line of associates, bachelor's, masters, or PhDs at this point, because the discussion has been, how does that fit in Southern Association approved degrees? So, for example, if we offer a master's in some area of emergency management, and someone has that, how does that compare to a master's in emergency management from University of North Texas? And so there's been some question on that, but it has been very well received with more organization, structure, guidance, and the curriculum guide, of course, catalog, which follows sort of the pattern of a university catalog, has been very well received over this last year.
That's great. Thank you, Keith. So another one of our questions says, once the program's implemented, is it available to go back and change the degree plan, specifically the courses that are required? So, of course, this is going to be a dynamic degree. We don't want to change it too much and change it all the time, but certainly if there's a new class that's launched that is great for recovery, then we certainly want to add that somehow into the degree plan. Now, we're not going to go and force everybody who's already graduated to retake that class or anything like that. But certainly, just like a regular college curriculum, there's always additions and changes and things like that happen naturally. Of course, we're going to do it in the best way that fits our volunteers, because we never want to ruffle any feathers. But if something does come along that we need to make a change, then certainly we can change that degree once we implement it. All right. Well, the last question I have is, how long does a volunteer have to be idle in their degree plan before they are considered inactive and removed? So that really goes back to your individual policy for when you inactivate and remove volunteers. So for our degree plan, again, we're putting the onus on that volunteer. So if they participate in the degree plan and then they're just not active as a volunteer, well, of course, they're going to be inactivated if they don't participate at all throughout the year. So that really models whatever region and their inactivation policy is. Of course, Red Cross University, it's just one more way to keep volunteers engaged, and we're hoping by having that requirement to log your hours of volunteer connection, we'll start to see that volunteers will start submitting hours, they'll start logging in, and we'll see activity in other ways that will keep them from being inactivated. All right, I've got another question here that says, for Paul, will there be a need to address some of the inconsistencies from the syllabus from region to region at the associates level? So let me see if I can understand your question here, Paul. So as for a syllabus from region to region, that's something that I think each region has to develop what their own policies are, because every region operates a little differently. So that syllabus will have to come internally from that region. But essentially at the associates level, that can be customized. I mean, we have some custom class that we've created, so that's really for our region as well. So it could be that maybe another region does something completely different, that they might want to change their associates up a little bit, because again, this is just what works for our region, but it doesn't necessarily work for every single region out there. All right, well, I have time for about one or two more questions. We do have to wrap it up here at 11 o'clock, but is there any last questions out there? All right, thank you, guys. Again, I do want to stress that this is still a new concept, and we're looking to launch on January 1st and start sharing our results with everybody. But if you'd like to get some more information, please email me at raymond.miller@redcross.org, or you can email any of our other specialists that are working in different pieces. But we're really excited that you all are joining us today to learn about this new concept. We're really hoping that it will keep volunteers engaged and make training fun. We really want volunteers that want to take training and get more involved in different aspects of what Red Cross does, and not just in disaster, but learning all lines of service. So thank you all for joining again, and if you have any questions, we'll be here to help answer you. So thanks again, everybody, for attending.